Hello and welcome back to Russ's Movie Corner. My name is Russ, and as you can see, I am sitting in front of my movie corner. I have my Son of God movie right here and my Guarding the Galaxy t-shirt on, and judging by the video playing around me, it is time to take down another atheist. And on the chopping block today is SciManDan. Yeah, long-time kind of rival of the channel here. He's a guy that I subscribe to because, again, I like his flat earth content. And there's something in this video that he's going to do. And I know a lot of you were probably expecting me to continue the comments on comments. And that's going to be on the next episode. Because right now, it's like I saw this and I thought I'm going to make this because I didn't get to do Christmas with my family because of the storm that hit during Christmas time. And so I just want to say, hope you all had a Merry Christmas. Hope you all got to travel. If you did travel, hope you traveled safely. And Happy New Year, because it is January 2023 as I'm recording this. So, getting back to what I was saying. This video popped up in my feed right around Christmas. I actually downloaded it to myself and was kind of like, okay, I need to look at this video because I want to see what this guy's doing. I want to see kind of how things are and like what is this guy doing that makes this video kind of the way it is. So you'll see me kind of glance down from time to time. I have a little list of points that I'm going to be stopping at, and so without any further ado, let's jump into this. So what this video is there was a guy named Just Kyle who put out a 6-minute video basically calling attention to how ludicrous evolution is, okay? And so Dan, as you'll hear, says, well, I'm going to debunk that. And I went, I'm probably going to end up debunking you, buddy. Because that's usually what happens in this situation. So without any further ado, let's jump into this.
Now, I know I said on Boxing Day that we would be looking at someone today who is giving us an Astronomy 101 lesson, but since then I have found something which requires my immediate attention. A video from someone who claims to have debunked the entirety of evolution in just 6 minutes.
Amazing.
Hello everyone and welcome along to another episode of Tinfoil Tuesday with me, SciManDan and Zeus. Thank you very much for joining me. Now,
funny that he should name his cat Zeus.
People that try to debunk evolution usually just don't understand evolution fully.
One could say the same about you. Because the vast majority of people that come to my channel, comment on my videos, don't understand a lick of evolution.
Well, a YouTuber called Just Kyle thinks that he has debunked evolution in just 6 minutes. Now, does he fully understand it? Let's find out.
Evolution is stupid, and I'm tired of acting like it's not. It's not scientific, and the only reason anyone believes something so ridiculous is because they are indoctrinated from the time they are born, in movies, in TV shows, in school. And all it takes is some basic level questions to debunk this crazy fairy tale.
I don't remember there being any movies or TV shows around in 1859 when Darwin released On the Origin of Species. Of course, since then, the reams of evidence to support his theory is unquestionable.
Is it though? Is it though? Come on now. The reams and reams of evidence that he is talking about don't actually exist. The evidence is not there. You just have people writing papers about connecting lines between different things on paper. That's not science, son. That's not evidence for anything. You're You're literally standing there saying, oh, well, we know this, we know that. No, you don't. Okay? Now, were there movies and TV shows back in 1859 when Darwin wrote his book? No. But, I mean, dude, I'm literally sitting in front of my movie corner. And I can point out that I have probably one section right over here, okay, that is full of movies like Son of God that are Christian in nature. I used to have some more, but when my ex-wife and I split up, we split a lot of the movies, okay? But I can tell you that there are probably, out of my movie collection, there are probably more movies in this collection that preach some form of evolution. In fact, one very famous example of this, okay, is this Marvel movie, The Eternals. Okay? That one preaches evolution. I mean, X-Men preaches evolution, right? They talk about evolution. They talk about the mutants being the pinnacle, Homo superior, okay? And the pinnacle of evolution, this kind of whole thing. It's like, really? Come on, man. It's all around us. We don't even realize that we're doing it. Hell, even James Cameron's Avatar, the original Avatar from 2009 that grossed like $2 billion at the box office, even that talks about evolution. Come on, dude. It's everywhere. And what evidence do you have for it again? Bones found in layers. That's it.
For example, how did the first eye develop? They say, oh, this is easy. We've done this so many times. This is probably what happened. Wait, what probably happened? Science about what actually happened. It's about what is empirically verifiable, what is observable, what is repeatable.
Very
Yet,
true. That's the
you have
scientific
to
method.
assume evolution to come up with this explanation about how the eye could have developed.
Well, actually, the fossil record shows us quite clearly that the first eyes appeared around 540 million years ago with the trilobites. There's real, actual evidence. And then a few million years later, eyes were everywhere, spurred on by the instinct to survive, that clear advantage of vision that the trilobite predators had. Now, Darwin himself, of course, realised how absurd it seemed for eyes to evolve. But you can quite clearly see how, with small, gradual steps. Light-sensitive cells, then light-sensitive cells all clustered together. Then having that collection of light-sensitive cells to form in a little depression, etc., etc., etc.
No. That's not what you have. Okay? What he's talking about is way down deep in the dirt. Okay? Way down deep at the very, very bottom of the layers that they say are billions of years old. Okay? Which, of course, they've never actually tested those rock layers, so they don't know that they're billions of years old. But they basically erected the geologic column, and then they went out and went, oh, look at this, we can do this. We can connect these things together and say that they're billions of years old. Here's the funniest thing. So you go down, and you have trilobites. Trilobites are still around, by the way. Okay? We have sent robots down to the bottom of the oceans and some of the deepest parts in the oceans, and we've seen trilobites. We know they're still around. And we know that they have some of the most sophisticated eyes on the planet. Even in the fossil record, the trilobite eye is one of the most sophisticated eyes on the planet. It's not the simplest. That's a lie. When they first looked at it, they thought, oh, it's simple. This is one of the examples of they do something, they find out that it's wrong, then they turn around and they go, oh, well, don't look at that. We know that it was simple. No, you don't. No, you don't, dude. You literally, all you have, and this is what he's talking about. So way down deep in the rock layers, okay, there's trilobite fossils, okay? Because they're bottom feeders, some of them would have been covered by the sediment, the wave of sediment coming out from the water bursting forth, okay? And they would have been covered by the dirt. Some of them might have been able to kind of like hop up and kind of ride the wave of silt. Others might have been doing something else and they might have gotten covered, okay? Then they're talking about what is known as the Cambrian explosion, which no evolutionist has ever been able to explain, by the way. It's explained very, very, very well by the flood of Noah. Okay? The flood of Noah very clearly says, well, everything died. And we see bones, dead things in the dirt. Fossilized. Pretty clear. That would have been the first flood of organisms that would have been caught off guard, okay, by the onrush of the sediment and the water that would have buried them, okay, before they realized just what the hell was happening. It happens every time there's a flood. In fact, you can go down to Louisiana and you can look at the Mississippi River Delta and you can probably find 1,000 fossils in there right now that are very new, that formed within the last however many, decades, okay? They're not millions of years old. They're relatively new fossils, but what's going to happen is that somebody's going to go down and go, see, kids, look at all these fossils in this terminal moraine of this flood delta. These are millions of years old. No, they're not. They're hundreds of years old, if that. Okay? Because they got buried as they went along. Fish get caught in it. Bottom feeders get caught in it. Shrimp, crawdads, they get caught in it in the wave and they get buried. Okay? But anyway, getting back to what I was saying. So what he's saying is that we have some trilobites and then boom! All these organisms with eyes. Fully formed, fully developed organisms. Nothing in between. There's trilobites, then there's organisms. That's it. And yet this guy is going to say, oh, you see, we know from the fossil record. No, you don't, dude. You don't have a fossil record. And you don't have transitional forms. What you see is what scientists thought were simple eyes on trilobites, which they're not. And then they went, oh, look. There's all these organisms here in this layer where the trilobites were down here. These layers are here. Oh man, now we know that the eye went from this to this. No, it didn't. And then he talks about, oh well, there was trillions of photosensitive cells, light sensitive cells. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. Your eye has trillions of nerves in them that connect to those light-sensitive cells that are on the back of what is called the retina. Okay? So, if you've ever had the eye exam where they take the picture of your eye and then you see that kind of an after image of all those all that spidery stuff, those are veins. Okay? Those are arteries. Those are blood vessels that sit on the back of your eye that protect your retina, okay? You literally look through that. In fact, at times when you see those little white things in front of your eyes, those are actually white blood cells that your eye is picking up through the light coming in, okay? And what ends up happening is that at the back of your eye, all of those light-sensitive cells come together and wrap together in what is known as the optic nerve. Okay? That optic nerve runs all the way through the back of your head, all the way through your head, all the way to the back, to the occipital lobe back here. Okay? That's why when, somebody gets hit from behind, somebody gets sucker punched from behind, their vision goes blurry. Is because that's where the information is gathered back here. Okay? And so you're talking about, first, you're talking about the cell, okay, that can sense light. There's all these kind of cells around that don't sense light, okay? Plus, there's a lens that protects that sensitive cell from light, okay? Because if you have too much light coming in, you will go blind. And one of the first lines of defense is your iris. It's that little thing that goes wide and down. It's what they call a pupillary response, okay? It's called a pupil, okay? It's an iris. It's basically like a camera lens, okay? That's what we based camera lenses on. It can go like really small when there's a lot of light, and when there's no light, it goes really wide, okay? And so you're talking about trillions of cells that are light sensitive. And he's saying, okay, so these light sensitive cells. Okay, how did that develop? How did that cell be able to sense that a photon was hitting it and going, wow, I should be able to see that. I should be able to perceive that. Then, somehow, and as if by magic, it developed a nerve, okay, to send a signal somewhere. Didn't know where, just to send a signal somewhere. And then somehow, and as if by magic, that had to go and hook to another neuron way back here, okay? Because that happens on every single animal, by the way. Every single animal, their eyes are in the front and their occipital lobes in the back, and their nerve goes all the way through. It's a common design. We'll get to that in a minute. But then somehow, and as if by magic, that had to figure out, I need to be able to send an electrical signal, an electrical impulse from myself all the way back along this to this cell over here, and know exactly where that cell has to hook in, because if it doesn't work. We know that because people are born blind. Dogs are born blind. Cats are born blind. There are tons of examples of this where the nerves don't connect quite right, and that person is born blind. Now, that could be a situation where the person is born with limited vision, where we can put glasses on them and they can see, because we're refracting that light to where the eye can actually perceive things near and far. But sometimes it means that person is born without sight at all, because that nerve doesn't quite connect where it's supposed to go. Okay? So, no, son, you don't. You don't have anything in the fossil record that shows that the trilobite eye was the simplest eye, and then it formed into two, and then finally went into two, which we'll get into here in a second.
Probable explanations is not science. We are talking about what actually happened, what we can go and repeat and do, and what we have seen. Yet you come up with these crazy fantasies about how an eye could have developed, but you have to...
Okay, let me just back up a tiny bit right here. I want to talk about this picture, okay? And I know I'm obscuring part of it. But this picture is out of a textbook, okay? And it's showing how the amino acids formed, how the different parts of the cell formed, and how DNA formed in a primordial soup. Okay? This is part of the, quote, Miller-Urey experiment that happened back in the, I think it was the 1950s. Okay? Because these two guys were like, hey, we're going to make it so that we know exactly how this stuff formed. Ha! We'll show you. They didn't show anything. What they did was they took a whole bunch of chemicals. Ammonia, methane, a bunch of different things. And what they did was they ran them through, they basically ran them through. But they did not use water, and they did not use oxygen. Why? Well, because amino acids break down in water, and because oxygen oxidizes things. It's why we get rust. It's why we get, different things like that. It's very caustic, okay? In fact, we're going to talk about this when we get to a certain part of Comments on Comments, because Turbo Brain mentions that hyperbaric chambers are at 100% oxygen. They are not at 100% oxygen. 100% oxygen would kill you. Trust me on this. So, what he did is he ran this mixture of gases and stuff, and then every once in a while, he zapped it with electricity. Okay, so he ran it through all these different tubes, and, titrated it, filtrated it, did all this different stuff, and then, at the bottom, he got this, red sludge. And he siphoned that sludge off. Then he would run it through again and get more sludge, and then he would siphon it off. What did he find? It was 90-something% carboxylic acid. Or no, 90% tar. 8% carboxylic acid. And 3% amino acids. And the amino acids that he produced were not part of the 20 amino acids that keep us alive, that make up the proteins in your skin cells and stuff. Okay? It was a failure. But they put it in the textbooks with pictures like this to say, this is how it happened, kids. Long ago and far away. This is how it happened. And you can see up in the corner, okay? I'll show you. Right up here. What is it doing? It's raining on the rocks. This is something that so many people, like Dan, like Professor Dave, like Aaron Ra, like P.Z. Myers, that people told me I should debate, okay, say, oh, I don't believe we came from rocks. What is this picture doing? It's raining on the rocks for millions of years. You literally believe you came, because those rocks, the rain from those rocks, pulled those minerals down into the water, and then that pulled it down towards fumaroles to where that's where the primordial soup happened. Folks, this is a fairy tale for grown-ups.
But you have to assume evolution to believe in that. The science man did not see the eye develop and say, oh, this is the science. This is what happened.
Very true.
This is empirically verifiable. They assume evolution is true, therefore, it can give an explanation for everything. Mm-hmm. It's a evolution of the gaps.
It truly
is. If there's
is.
any gap in the world,
I agree.
Random chance, natural selection, it can explain it. It's like God of the gaps. Except which is a terrible argument.
It is a terrible argument, but it's not what evolutionists do. If there is a gap in our understanding, then it remains a gap until suitable proof has been found. Yes, theories do fill those gaps until better theories come along, but we won't claim anything's definitive until the proper evidence has been discovered.
Yeah, right. That's what you guys literally do. So let's look at Piltdown Man. Okay, just for one example, Piltdown Man. Okay, they found a skeleton. Okay, somewhere in Piltdown, England, and they said, "Look at this. This is the ancestor of humans." And they found out that it was like the jawbone of an orangutan. Okay, but they still teach it. It's been debunked, and it's also let's talk for 1 second, because this is one of the things that Ken Hovind likes to bring up all the time. Let's talk for 1 second about the Ernst Haeckel, okay? The theory of embryology, okay? Ernst Haeckel went and basically altered drawings of embryos and fetuses, okay? To make them look more fish-like and reptilian and animalistic. Okay? And when other scientists went and started doing some dissection on animals and pregnant animals and started looking at actual embryos, and then they looked at Ernst Haeckel's drawings, they went, oh my God, he frickin' lied, and they took him to trial, and his own university convicted him of fraud in like 1875 or 1874 or something like that. Okay? Yet they still teach it in the textbooks today. They still teach evolution of embryology. From embryology. We know from embryos that the embryos look very similar. No, they don't. They completely look totally different. And anyone who's a vet will tell you that horses and turtles and dogs and cats all look so different when they're in the embryo stage because they learn that stuff in school. And they're going to go, this biology of embryology is bad. Yet they still freaking teach it. And Dan has the gall to stand there and say, oh, well, we don't say anything is definitive. Bullshit! Yes, you do. You are the biggest hypocrite and liar on the planet, Dan. And every single one like you, Dave, Aaron Raw, PZ Myers, I could go on and on. You all do this. Stop. If you're going to live it, but don't sit there and tell me that I have to. Okay? That I have to pay to have it taught in schools. That is bullshit. It is not science. It is fakery disguised as science. And yeah, you don't have anything better. It's the only thing you have. Because if you'd had actual evidence of embryology that actually showed that this was the way things were, then yeah, you would have done that. It is literally evolution of the gaps. And it's why they changed the word theory, literally changed the word theory to mean law, because they wanted to say evolution is a law, but they couldn't because they didn't have enough evidence to back it up. In fact, there's actually more evidence for creation and a worldwide flood than there is for your stupid theory. So they literally went out there and said, theory means that it is proven. We know that it is. Bullshit.
Yet they are committed to this, and you can see because they will make everything fit their grand narrative. Even if you grant them that somehow an eye could develop, how do you get two eyes that are nearly identical? I mean, the mathematical improbability of this, but then to get it twice?
Very true.
This is so ridiculous.
Well, there was only one eye to begin with, but then the vertebrates came along and seemed to have success with the bifurcation of the nervous system. Now, this meant that the two sides of the body could be controlled independently. After that, it was only a matter of time before two eyes were better than one. It helps with width of view and depth perception, two massive advantages if you're hunting prey or trying to avoid capture.
What do you think a trilobite is, dude? What do you think a trilobite is? A trilobite is a bottom feeder. It doesn't need to see very long. But again, its eye is very sophisticated. It is not very simple. The eye is actually very sophisticated. In fact, most people think, oh, they had some... No. The eye is very simple. And here again, okay, and this I go back to a number of times. Go read the book in 6 days, okay? I will post a link to Amazon below, okay? Because basically what it is when these guys had, when they did some of this stuff, okay? Just noting down that thing here. Basically, there was a mathematician, okay, in the book, in 6 days, okay? He sat down and he calculated the probability that something could develop over billions of years, okay? And he basically calculated that there were X many proteins, only 20 of those X many proteins, or I mean amino acids, sorry, not proteins, amino acids are necessary for proteins to develop, okay? This is just saying if there was amino acids and there was proteins, like out of all the amino acids that we know of, okay, X many number of amino acids that we know of, only 20 of X many amino acids are necessary to function for life, okay? And there are so many proteins out there that don't actually do anything, and there's so many amino acids that don't actually do anything, okay? And out of all these, okay, the probability that these 20 got together and created the first protein, because proteins are hundreds of amino acids long, okay? So the probability that this happened is like this much 10 to the 21st. Okay, it's like 1 times 10 to the 151st, probability that this could have happened, okay? Once. And then from there, okay, that it had to have happened, it had to have repeated, because for one skin cell, okay, you have to have a ton of proteins. Like you look at the length of the hair on my arm, okay, that is made up of thousands of proteins, okay, that basically build, that basically smack into the bottom and then push up the hair, smack into the bottom, push up into the hair, smack into the bottom, push up the hair, because that's how your hair grows, okay? And yes, every once in a while, your hair follicle falls out, okay? The follicle dies and it falls out, and then a new one is created underneath, and then it grows up, okay? Hell, I have to shave, I mean, because I'm a guy, I get hair on my face. I have to shave if I want to keep it clean shaven, okay? But what I'm saying is that for that to happen, you have to have thousands upon thousands of proteins. So you have to have millions upon millions of those 20 amino acids to create just one hair cell. Just one hair. Never mind your whole entire body. People, watch this movie, okay? I'm dead serious. Watch this movie, Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. It really dispels the fact that there is a ton of stuff that is happening in academia today, okay, that is scientifically impossible, yet they continue to parrot it as scientific gospel.
The easiest way to demonstrate this is to bring up the complexity of DNA. And because they assume evolution is true, they will come up with literal fairy tales, like primordial soup as the origins of DNA. Or some of them will even believe in aliens.
Yes, it is true that we are not 100% sure where or how DNA came to be. But there is no doubt that it had to have happened once proteins existed. There are a few theories of cause, but as I said earlier, none will be confirmed until the proper evidence has been found.
Which they haven't found. Because no proper evidence exists. Because again, what you have in the fossil record is you have trilobites, then you have animals. The problem is that you have a chicken and the egg problem here. How do you get this hair protein? Where does it come from? Ask yourself that question. Where does that hair protein come from? Where does my skin cell protein? Because my skin sloughs off, but new skin is formed underneath. Where does that protein come from? DNA. DNA literally has the coding for this hair, for this skin cell. Each cell in your body, okay, has DNA inside the nucleus, okay? And if you were to unravel that DNA and open it up, okay, it's miles long. It is gigantic how big this thing is, okay? And that's in each cell in your body. In fact, I think it's if you were to take all of the DNA in your body, I think it goes to the moon and back like 4 or 5 or 6 times or something like that. It's gigantic. You have millions of miles of DNA in your body, hundreds of thousands of miles of at least, and millions of miles of DNA in your body. Okay, because each cell in your body, okay, has DNA in it. Okay, and on that DNA is coding for specific cells. And where that cell is in the body, the RNA says, oh, we're the hair-making cell. So they go to the DNA, and they latch on to the DNA, and they unzip the double helix, okay? And they run along coding for that hair protein. And it's on a specific part of your DNA. And it just runs along that specific part. Then it takes that, okay? Because it unzips and rezips the thing as it goes along. Okay, it's like a zipper, like when you run a zipper back and forth. Okay, if you were to take that and run it back and forth, that's basically what RNA is doing. Okay, it's looking at that zipper. Okay, it's unzipping and zipping at the same time. Okay, so imagine that the zipper was actually zipped in front of the thing, and that was just unzipping it and zipping it back up as it was going along. That's basically what RNA does. Okay, and then it leaves. It rezips the DNA up, and then it leaves. Okay, then it goes to a different part of the nucleus where it goes back and forth from. Okay, and it drops that specific code of RNA to what's known as the messenger RNA, or the mRNA. And the mRNA goes out of the nucleus, and it goes over to the ribosome. Okay? It goes to the ribosome, and it goes, hey, ribosome, I have this code. I need you to make a protein. And between the endoplasmic reticuli, the Golgi bodies, and the ribosomes, they make the protein for the hair cell, for this hair. Okay, they make that protein, and then they send it out. And like I said, that protein goes up, bam, hits into the end, the hair grows a tiny bit. Okay, and millions upon millions of those proteins are being created every single day because your hair grows. Okay, you have to go get a haircut. Your hair grows. If you're a guy, you get hair on your face, and you have to shave, right? That hair every single day grows. Okay, millions upon millions of proteins are growing, and then we take it and we shave it off. Okay, either electrically or with a razor or whatever. So, yeah, you have a chicken and the egg problem now, because you're saying, oh, well, DNA could have formed because of proteins. But how do we get proteins? How do the proteins know what to look like? Because the first protein that developed could have been a hair protein. It could have been an eye cell protein. It could have been any protein. You see what I'm saying? There could not have been proteins without DNA, because DNA tells us where that protein goes. Even in bacteria, okay, their DNA is literally telling them how they should behave, okay? Their DNA is literally telling them, I need this or I need that. Hell, viruses, okay? Virus DNA, when it latches onto a cell, what it does is it actually injects its own DNA, and it rewrites some of the code, some of the genetic code of the original host cell DNA. And then it starts propagating. That's how HIV got around the immune system, is because it attacks the cells that are like white blood cells. It attacks, cells on your spleen and on your appendix, so that it rewrites some of the code of those, so that it creates cells that don't recognize the virus. Okay? That's the point. This guy wants you to believe that, oh, we just know, again, and as if by magic, that proteins happened, and so then DNA came along. Which is actually backwards to the biblical account. Because what does God do? God fashions animals. Fully formed animals, which means he had to have created the DNA for those animals. And when he fashioned man, okay, and breathed life into him, he had to have fashioned our DNA and how we work. That's the only explanation that sounds logical. Because just happening in primordial soup, where proteins break down in water and oxygen oxidizes, they have no leg to stand on with that picture that I showed before. None. Literally none. They have none. They have no proof that it happened that way, yet they teach it as scientific gospel. And you heard Dan say, oh, well, until a better theory comes along, until the proof is there, then, we just say, no, you don't. You preach it as gospel. Shut your face.
So they will literally believe anything except the historical narrative, the biblical narrative.
Oh, here we go. Why would we believe something that there is no empirical evidence for? Something which you've been harping on about for the entirety of the beginning of this video.
Dude. No. There is so much evidence for this one book. Okay? And there is so much scientific accuracy in this one book that your willing ignorance on this is not my problem. You sitting there saying, why would we believe anything when there's no empirical evidence for it? We have evidence for this. And we have evidence that there are things in this book that are actually scientifically valid. Okay? It's your willing ignorance, and it's your people, your scientific community, that willingly sit there and say, there's no evidence. You are ignoring it. Willingly ignoring it. And the funny thing is, the Bible actually says that you are willingly ignorant of this fact.
Really?
Funny as hell.
Because obviously a primordial soup to explain something as complex as DNA just makes so much sense. Again, we've never seen this, just like we haven't seen monkey into man. We have...
Yes, and this chart, I'm just going to pause this really quick. This chart was in all of my science classrooms growing up. Except when I was at a Catholic private school. They didn't have this up there because they didn't teach that. They just taught basic science. It wasn't, but when I went into 8th grade, when I was in elementary school, okay, and they were talking about science, this chart was on the wall. Or they brought up this chart. Okay? Because they're saying apes and humans have a common ancestor. So yes, they are saying that there was an ape and then it evolved to slowly walk upright. And what I asked an actual teacher once. I said, okay, so if Homo erectus and Homo neanderthalis had these like beneficial mutations, right? They had these supposed beneficial mutations. Why are they gone? Why are they not still around? Oh, well, we don't know. I mean, we don't understand them. You know. They don't have an answer for it. They literally don't have an answer for it. But yes, this is the chart that was on every single wall in every single science classroom when I was growing up. And when I went to college. And that was in the late 90s to early 2000s, folks. Not that long ago. But you'll notice that they've gotten rid of it. Why? Because all of the evidence that they supposedly have is fake. So they quietly got rid of it, and now they call people like me conspiracy theorists for believing in this. Or for, showing this as evidence of evolution. It's like, dude, they literally taught this for years! Like, They literally tell us from like the early 1900s until the early 2000s, for like 100 years, this is what they taught evolution was. So I call bullshit.
We haven't seen the eye develop. We haven't seen DNA come to be in a primordial soup.
That's true.
They are committed to evolution. They can't answer any of that. They can't answer junk DNA. And the more and more questions you ask them, you're going to realize how committed they are to evolution of the gaps.
What do you mean we can't answer junk DNA? Junk DNA or non-coding DNA isn't really an issue. We've recently discovered that this junk DNA actually does do something. In fact, over 30 scientific papers now show that it's vital for gene-controlling activities. But before we knew that, it was a major problem for the creationists. I mean, why would you create something with junk DNA?
Because, as you just proved, it's not junk. It was never a problem for us because we were like, dude, we just know that there's like this DNA over here that we don't understand what it does right now. How do you explain that it's there? Because if everything is supposedly going more complex and everything is supposedly getting better, then why is there this DNA that doesn't do anything? That was our question to you, the evolutionist. You could never answer that question. But both Christian scientists and evolutionist scientists have found, and yes, there are a bunch of scientific papers now that talk about how it's not junk DNA, it actually does have a purpose. We could explain junk DNA very easily. You guys don't like it. Genesis 3:17. Then to Adam he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife, and have eaten from the tree about which I have commanded you, saying, you shall not eat from it. Curse is the ground because of you. In toil you will eat of it all the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles shall grow for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you will eat bread, till you return to the ground, because from it you were taken, and for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. Now the man called his wife Eve, because she was the mother of all the living. The Lord God made garments of skin for Adam and his wife, and clothed them. And then the Lord God said, behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, and now he might stretch out his hand, and take also from the tree of life, and eat, and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him out from the Garden of Eden to cultivate the ground from which he was taken. So he drove the man out, and at the east of the Garden of Eden he stationed a cherubim and the flaming sword which turned every direction to guard the way of the tree to the tree of life. We're sinful. We need a savior. Okay? We're sinful. The fall of man. That's what it is. You don't want to recognize that. That's fine. You don't have to. But that's what it is. Okay? That's how we explained junk DNA. It was never a problem for us. Because we explained it as, it's a part of the fall. And now it comes out that it isn't junk DNA, that it is actually, and then we go, well, then that just proves that the designer knew what he was doing when he did it. It's still a problem for you, because you couldn't explain it.
You're going to realize they really don't know anything. Yet they are committed, and they get mad at me when I don't take it as the gospel of truth that I'm a monkey man.
Look, I'm not going to get mad at you, but I'm afraid to say that you are a monkey man, whether you like it or not. Well, an ape man. I mean, this...
All of this proves is that there's a common designer. I mean, hell... Dogs, the pads on their feet have a pattern like this that's very unique to every single dog. Cats, same thing. Okay? That doesn't prove anything. It just proves that they had a common designer, son. And no, I'm not related to an ape. You can believe you are. Okay? But I'm not. I was knit together in my mother's womb by God. I am a child of God. It's sad that you're not, Dan. I wish you were, but you're not. Okay? And I feel sad for your family because they believe in this crap.
This just proves nothing, does it?
And they are perfectly fine with indoctrinating young, impressionable kids in the entire world to believe their made-up mythology. And if you disagree with them, you're a heretic against scientism. And they will discredit anyone as pseudoscience if you don't agree with their made-up mythology. They have their dog.
Okay, I'm going to pause this right here because we need to kind of talk about this this part. So this is why I'm saying, like, I can't believe Dan missed this completely. So let's talk about this first one up here in the red, the very, very top one. Earth is not flat. Now, I don't know about Just Kyle. I don't know if he is a flat earther or not. But most mainstream Christians believe that the earth is round. Okay? Because what is a circle in 3 dimensions? A freaking sphere. Any first year art student will tell you that. Okay? Any child on Earth, okay? You show them a circle, you show them a sphere, they're going to go, wow, they look similar. Yeah. We live in a 3-dimensional world, man. X, Y, Z. Figure it out. Now, the second one. Vaccines work. I'm going to assume that in this context they're talking about the coof. Okay? that's what I'm assuming here. I don't know that for sure. I had vaccines when I was a kid, and I know most of that, I know, like, probably the entire population of where I lived, okay, or where I actually currently live, okay, had those shots when they were kids. Okay? And none of us were, like the severely autistic. None of that happened, okay? I've never had measles. I've never had mumps. I've never had rubella. I've never had any of that stuff. So yeah, those vaccines work. Now, coof? That's a totally different story. Okay? We could talk about that till the cows come home. We're not going to, but that's what we're going to do. Okay? Now, the third one down in the yellow, okay, is we've been to the moon. Yes, we have been to the moon. Okay? We have been to the moon. We know that we've been to the moon. Okay? My parents actually sat in their living rooms and watched Neil Armstrong walk down the ladder and step out onto the moon. They were watching Walter Cronkite. Okay? In fact, we were sitting in Apollo 13 and my mom teared up when she was watching that scene where Jim Lovell is watching Neil Armstrong walk on the moon for the first time. Because she actually experienced that. Okay? She actually experienced that. That movie was very emotional for her because she actually lived through those events. Okay? The landing on the moon, and then Apollo 13, and then all the other Apollo moon landings. Now, climate change. I agree, man-made climate change is not real. I will 100% agree with that. Man-made climate change is not real. Okay? They're pushing and fear-mongering a whole bunch of stuff because reasons. The IPCC has like 2,500 people, and only 5 of those 2,500 people are actual climate scientists. Because they're the ones that believe that climate change is real. Okay? The IPCC is a farce. It has nothing to do with actual climate change. It has everything to do with redistribution of wealth. It is a socialist piece of shit. Now, the universe is expanding. I will agree there is a red shift. What that red shift means could be interpreted several different ways. Okay? I'm choosing to believe that the red shift is because the Lord stretched out the heavens. Now, here's a funny thing. Okay? When they put the Hubble telescope up, okay, if you take a pen, okay, take an ordinary pen, and you hold it away from your face, okay, at arm's length, okay, so you're holding it like this, and you look at the tip of that pen, like a ballpoint, just take a ballpoint pen, okay, you look at the tip of that pen in the night sky. That's the size of the patch of sky that they took that famous picture of the Hubble that has like the 3,000 galaxies in it. Okay? That was how they calculated the age of the Earth, or the age of the universe, and the age of the Earth, and all that kind of stuff. Okay? That was how they did it. That and the CMBR. Okay? Now, they put this big, powerful telescope up in space called the James Webb Telescope. And they started taking pictures. They basically aimed it at the same spot in the sky that they aimed the Hubble. That same spot where they found those 3,000 galaxies, and they took pictures in that same spot. And when those pictures came out, they went, something's wrong. Because if they estimate the age based on the light, based on the speed of light, based on all of this kind of stuff, they estimate all of this stuff, the galaxies that they took pictures of, okay, originally with the Hubble, they estimated, okay, they're like, this many billions of years old. They took these pictures and they failed, and they went, wait a minute. These galaxies are too big for the distance that they're supposed to be at. Because when they took the picture, the redshift hadn't happened yet. Which means that the galaxy is either A, much closer than they thought, or B, older than the Big Bang. There's a bunch of videos out there that you can find. In fact, I'll link to a couple of them down below. Okay? The next one, the kind of aqua-colored one there. Math is the universal language. It absolutely is. I will agree. I tutor kids in math, okay? And you can go to any country on the planet, okay? And if you don't speak the language, you can still do this, and they understand what you mean. Not peace, the number 2, okay? Or 4, or 5, or 10, okay? Numbers in math is a universal language. It absolutely is. It is a glimpse into the mind of God. Just go look at the Madlebrot set. Absolutely fascinating look at that. Dr. Jason Lislie does a very good job explaining that. Okay. Chemtrails aren't a thing. Absolutely 100% true. Now, I don't know if this kid's a conspiracy. This Just Kyle is a conspiracy. I don't know if he just went out and grabbed this and just screenshot it and just put it in the video just as sort of a, thing, when he didn't actually look at what he was putting up there, or if he actually believes some of this stuff, okay? He does believe that the Earth is flat, that he's a flurfer, or he does believe that, the moon landing was a hoax, or that he does believe that chemtrails are a thing. Chemtrails are not a thing, okay? I lived in a place here in Washington State that was absolutely the conspiracy theory capital of the universe. Okay? Everybody had a conspiracy theory in that place. I am not kidding you. Every single person had a conspiracy theory. I tried to find the people that had the least amount of conspiracy theories to hang out with, because they were the ones that were like me, that were the most normal, that just kind of believed in, a few things, and that was it. But every day I would go to a store, okay, and somebody was standing there with poster boards with all of these pictures on it, and they were pushing some conspiracy theory, okay? And the biggest conspiracy theory that I saw the most was that back during the Cold War, okay, when we were under threat of nuclear attack from the Soviets, okay, and from communists and from all these, we had the Cold War, okay, we had this struggle. Because we knew that certain places were targets, we put special antennas. We disguised them to look like trees. We disguised them to look like rocks. We disguised them to look like things. And we put them out in places where the Soviets would not be able to attack easily, okay? So that if a city was nuked, or attacked in some way and we lost communication, or like they bombed NORAD and we lost communication, or they bombed the Pentagon and NORAD wanted to communicate with troops in the field, we had the ability to fire up these communication arrays and send signals out. Okay? This is an absolute thing. Because my dad, being that he was a part of the Vietnam conflict and he, did some things in the Army, he knew about this stuff. And I actually asked him about it one day. I was like, what are they? I said, are these what I think they are? They were commissioned during the Cold War and they're just inert. They just sit there until they fire them up. He goes, yes. So what the conspiracy theory was that our government is poisoning us with these antennas out in the middle of the forest. No. In fact, one lady was like adamant about it. She absolutely pulled me aside and she was like, this is real. And I said, ma'am, those are Cold War antennas. My dad was in the Army, okay? And he served in Vietnam. He absolutely went to, like these were things that if we had a breakdown in communication, they could fire these up and they could use them as communications with subs, with ships out in the Pacific, with ships out in the Atlantic. They're all over the place, okay? We put them so that we could have communication, military communication in case of an attack during the Cold War. We don't use them anymore. They're there. If we needed them, we could fire them up. But with the way that we have satellites now and we have cell phones and we have different things like that, we don't need that as much. Because a person would have to knock out the satellites as well as knock out what's on the ground for us to be able to fire those up. Okay? So, chemtrails? Totally not a thing. Because if you actually take a pair of binoculars when you see a plane flying overhead and you see what are supposedly chemtrails, and you look, they're not chemtrails. Those are literally the air coming out of the engine is superheated, okay? And it's hitting super cold air up in the upper atmosphere, okay? And it's freezing into crystals. That's just basically vapor. It's ice crystal vapor. It's clouds, folks. Okay. The next one down, the blue one, is evolution is a fact. That one I totally disagree with. I am with Just Kyle on this. Evolution is not a fact. Okay? It has no basis in any scientific journal. The only thing we see is adaptation or speciation, but that does not prove macroevolution. The next one down, it says we are all made of stardust. This, I believe, is a universalist Unitarian belief. That, like when stars explode or whatever, they give off matter and then we're made of that stardust. Totally untrue. We're made of dust. The same dust that's in the earth, okay? In fact, if you go and you look at a person, like if you were to dig up a person, right? You open up their grave and you look at their decomposed body, it is mostly dust, okay? It's not stardust, it's just dust. And if you were to test it against dirt next to it, you'd find that they're pretty much made up of the same properties. Okay. The next one down, the lighter purple, almost pinkish one, says, science is like magic, but real. I agree. Sometimes it is. There are legit, actual scientific things, like gravity, for instance. I'm sitting here on the ground. Gravity is a thing. I can pick up this piece of paper and I can drop it. Oh, gravity is a thing. But when you're talking about the evolution is a fact argument, yes, I totally agree. Science is like magic, but real. Okay? Because they want you to believe in their fairy tale. Now, someone can say, yeah, but you don't have any proof that God is out there and that God is real and that God created everything. You're right. I don't have any scientific evidence that there is an omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient God except what I feel inside. Okay? Because I felt God. I have heard God talk to me. I have had experiences like that. Okay? I cannot prove that to you. Okay? What science, what people say when they say that is that they have a little box and they want God to come down and live inside that box. And they want to be able to poke him and prod him and see that he's real. That's not what God is. As Ken Hovind said in the 3-on-1 debate, if I could fit God into my 3-pound brain, he would not be worth worshiping. That's for sure. And it's true. If I could fit the omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient God in my 3-pound brain, he would not be worth worshiping. If you put God in a box, he would not be worth worshiping. But yet, there are people out there that do that. They try to fit God in their own little box. That is wrong. Okay? We're not about that. Now, the last one, nuclear power is safe. Absolutely it is. My dad worked at a nuclear power plant that is still running today. Okay? He worked at it for 25 years. Okay? There have only been a handful of incidents that have happened where you could say, oh, nuclear power is not safe. The most famous one, and I think everyone will agree. Let me just grab it. Oh, come on now. I just watched this. There it is. I was like, I know it's there. But the most famous example, Chernobyl. Chernobyl. Okay? But that was, I call that the perfect storm of human error. Okay? Where they had a design that was cheap, and they pushed that reactor to the limit. They basically stretched it like a slingshot, and then were surprised when it went off. Okay? And it costs thousands of lives. Even today, the effects of Chernobyl are still being felt in Ukraine, Belarus, and the Soviet Union, in Russia, basically. Okay? It still is. Absolutely. Because of human error. Okay? We have a process to get rid of the nuclear waste. We have a few processes to get rid of nuclear waste. Okay? My dad actually, when he retired from the nuclear power plant that he worked at for 25 years, he actually went to work for a consulting firm, and he actually worked at a plant that was dealing with the low-level nuclear waste, the leaking barrels, okay? That were the stuff that they made originally when they had some of the first nuclear reactors. But when they built the biggest nuclear reactor that's out there, that's still running today, yes, the moon pool is full of rods that we haven't been able to do anything with. But now, just this last year, they have finished a vitrification plant. And what the vitrification plant is that it is literally a smelter. Okay? And you pour the rods in, and you pour sand in, and what comes out the other end is a log of glass. And they put that in a container, they load it on a truck, and they take it to Yucca Mountain. In fact, let me see here. Didn't we see that in this film? Yucca Mountain. Okay? That's what that big flap was back when George W. Bush was president of the United States. He said, we're going to build these vitrification plants. We're going to make sure that they work. We're going to create these glass logs, and then we're going to go store them down in Yucca Mountain. And all of the environmentalists were like, oh, you can't do that. Oh, it's not safe. Oh, you're going to bury radioactive materials in a concrete and lead bunker. Shut the fuck up about things you don't understand. Seriously. Shut the fuck up. So, I wanted to pause it on this list. I know I'm over time, and this is going to be kind of a long video, but I wanted to make sure that I stopped on this and that I talked about each one of these. Yes, the Earth is not flat. Yes, most vaccines work. Yes, we've been to the moon. No, man-made climate change is not real. The universe is expanding? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know, for sure, okay? We just experience a red shift, but we haven't actually, seen, other galaxies and things, we haven't actually seen that expansion. We've just assumed it because of the red shift. Okay? Yes, math is a universal language. Chemtrails are definitely not a thing. It's a total conspiracy theory, just like the government's poisoning us with EM waves with, defunct antennas out in the middle of the forest. Evolution is not a fact. It is absolutely not a fact. The only thing we see is adaptation, which is also known as speciation. It's just basically we see things adapting to their environments. That's it. We're all made of stardust? Nope, we're not made of stardust. Science is like magic but real, and in the last two facts of evolution is a fact and we're all made of stardust, yep, science is like magic but real. Okay? And nuclear power is 100% safe. And it's also 100% green. Okay? So, I do stand for some things in science. I really do. Most people don't think I do, but I do.
Dogmas, and Darwinism is their grandest of grand dogmas. They have their own creed. Scientism is a cult. So if someone says
totally
to
you,
you don't believe in evolution? You don't believe that you're a monkey? Say, yeah.
Yep.
I don't believe in made-up Hindu fairy tales.
I mean, that's a bit rich, isn't it? You don't believe in made-up fairy tales, but the first woman was definitely created by the first man's rib. Oh, yeah, 100%. What's that? What's the evidence? Oh, it was written down in this book that I've been reading. Yes, it's a book, just like On the Origin of Species is. What's your point? Oh, well, the stuff in that book, On the Origin of Species, is nonsense, but my book's correct, though.
You don't know how hypocritical... Look at this smug. Look at this smugness. Okay, really look at this smugness. Okay? And then go back. Actually go back. Okay? About 10 seconds of his rant there. Okay? From when I paused it, go back about 10 seconds and listen to what he said again. I'm dead serious. Listen to it. Really listen to it. Did you listen to it? How smug is this? How hypocritical is this? Oh, we don't want to believe the mountains of evidence for this book. But oh, this book over here on the origin of species. Oh, that's our Bible. You can't touch that. You know the biggest hypocritical statement I hear from evolutionists? The biggest hypocritical statement? Well, the Bible was written by man, so we shouldn't believe it. On the Origin of Species was written by one man, and you take it as frickin' gospel. How hypocritical do you have to be to not believe this book that has thousands of years of historical, archaeological, anthropological evidence behind it? Oh, we're going to ignore this one. But this book over here that this guy wrote, called On the Origin of Species, which we haven't observed anything in this book except for adaptation, as I just said, and we're going to take this one as absolute gospel. Now, Just Kyle mentioned Hindu fairy tale. I don't know that that's true or not. I don't know that evolution is a Hindu fairy tale. I know that it is. I know that evolution is an absolute fairy tale for grown-ups, though. But look at this smugness on Dan's face. This is what infuriates me, is how smug they are when they say this stuff. Oh, well, we just know. Bullshit. You don't have a clue, man. And yet you're all smug about it. Oh, see? I just said that the Bible was written by men and that we shouldn't believe it. Look at how smug I am. You're a hypocrite, Dan. You're Scam Man Dan. You're not SciManDan.
You should grow up. I mean, I used to believe in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy, but then you get rid of these superstitious beliefs like primordial soup and aliens and...
Okay. Hang on one second now. I'll agree, the Tooth Fairy is fake. Santa Claus? He was real. At least based on a real person. St. Nicholas, okay? Who was a guy that worked in a church, and he would, like, watch the kids. On Sundays, he would move around the village during the day and kind of watch the kids. And he would keep a list. Who was naughty, who was nice. And then he would go and, like, deliver to those kids presents every Christmas Eve. And on that Christmas Eve, they would either get a present, like, you know, like a gold coin or like a little toy or something like that, if they were good. And if they were bad, they got a lump of coal. That was where we get the whole thing of you're either on the nice list or you're on the naughty list. Okay? Around Christmas time. Now, I will agree. Primordial soup? Stupid. Aliens? Eh. Plausible, maybe? Doubtful.
Evolution and Monkey Man, it's the same thing. And if someone says to you, but you don't believe like carbon dating and like the light in physics says the world's like 10 million, 1 billion, 4 billion years old, you don't believe that? Say, well, all these methods, all these things that we use to date the Earth have only been studied really for like the last 100 years. So to take 100 or even like 1,000 years of data and trends and to assume that these principles have functioned in the exact same way for millions and billions of years is incredibly irresponsible. It's unscientific.
Well,
it's called uniformitarianism.
It's not. Carbon dating, whilst it can't date in the millions of years era, it is still very useful. And of course, the 50,000 years that it can date up to is still vastly longer than the age of the Earth according to young Earth creationists. Uranium and lead dating, though, for example, can go all the way back to day dot. And the radioactive decay of atoms is something that you simply cannot argue with.
Radiocarbon dating, or I should say radiometric dating, is inaccurate. Only because you, Dan, are assuming that there was only uranium at the beginning and then it decayed into lead over billions of years. Okay? We assume the half-life of things because we don't see it. We don't know that uranium decays into lead over so many odd billions of years. We assume it does because we measure how fast the neutrons are flying off of the molecule. Okay? That's what radioactivity is. Neutrons are like a bullet. They go, boom! Okay? They fly. And when they collide with other things, it can be very harmful. Okay? Especially if there's trillions of them hitting you all at once. Okay? In the case of, say, I don't know, a nuclear meltdown? But we don't know. That's the point. It's assumed that it's this long because we measure how long a half-life is, and then we say there's so many half-lives, half-life, and then it becomes an inert lump of lead. It's assumed. But we don't know because we haven't observed that yet. Okay? What we have observed is that when we speed up that reaction inside of, like, say, a reactor vessel, that half-life speeds up tremendously. And so it decays eventually, and this is one of the reasons why we use plutonium now instead of uranium, is because uranium half-lives are super fast, and so it decays into a chunk of lead very quickly when we heat it up, when we use it for heat to make steam, to make electricity. But with plutonium, it doesn't do that as fast. It breaks down more slowly, okay? So we don't have to replace the rods as often in a plutonium-based reactor than we do in a uranium-based reactor. But let me talk 1 second about probably the most famous example of carbon dating actually working. Okay? This is the one time it worked, and it's hilarious to me. So, the Shroud of Turin is the supposed burial shroud of Jesus. Okay? It was something that was passed down from church to church. It was kind of passed around, and it ended up, the reason why it's called the Shroud of Turin is because it ended up in Turin, Italy, or Torino. And basically, I think it was like 1532. Okay, I was watching this special on this. Okay, back in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. Okay, this is one of the reasons why I started not believing in certain methods of dating, because they were so inaccurate, or people were making them look inaccurate because they were being stupid about it. So they had this show on the Shroud of Turin, and the Shroud of Turin, it got burned in this fire. So basically what happened is it was in this church in Turin, Italy, and this fire burned in the church, and the fire burned hot enough that it actually melted the silver casing that the shroud was protected by, and some of the molten silver dripped on the shroud, and that's why you get those kind of a diamond pattern in the actual shroud itself. Okay? So some of the scientists were sitting there, and they were thinking, oh my god, so if this is actually the burial shroud of Jesus, we don't want to desecrate it by like cutting it up and, you know, and testing it. So they said, we're going to cut the burnt portion. But they cut a swatch that was about maybe an inch, 2 inches long along the burned side, that had about 3/4 of it was burned, and about 1/4 of it was the shroud itself. Okay? So they cut it, and then they tested the burnt portion. They got a date of 1532 plus or minus a couple years. You know, plus or minus like 10 years. Carbon dating. They came out, it's a fake. Are you fucking serious right now? I mean, I'm deadly serious. Are you serious right now? You dated it, and it came out with the exact date of the fire, and all of a sudden it's a fake? It got burned in the fire. That shows that it got burned in the fire. It doesn't show that it's a fake, you absolute idiot. And then they went on. They waffled on for like 10 or 15 minutes in the special. This is like an hour-long special. And then after they got done with that, they waffled on about how they were trying to... And this one guy, like, literally took a piece of canvas that was, you know, similar to the make and structure of the original shroud, and then tried to paint, with red paint, the face that you see in the shroud. And he's like, yeah, no, this isn't how it works, guys. Because this is an actual, like, impression. It's actually... They actually flattened it out, and then they scanned it with a laser. And they actually found that the impression of the face is in 3 dimensions. It's not just a flat... It's not like somebody painted it on. It had to have been molded around somebody's face. Okay? So that's an example of when carbon dating actually worked, but the scientists were so eager to call something fake that is an actual religious artifact, they wanted so bad to be able to call it fake that when they got the date of the fire, they immediately came out and said, it's a fake! I should put up the little meme of Senator Vreenak. It's a fake! It's one of my favorite episodes. If you haven't seen it, Deep Space Nine in the Pale Moonlight, it's, I believe it's on the Captain's Collection. The Captain's Log. Yeah. Star Trek Captain's Log Fan Collective. These were released back in the early 2000s. They had a whole bunch of these different collections. I've got every single one of them. They've got a Q, they've got time travel, they've got Klingon, Borg, alternate lives and realities, and then they have this Captain's Log, which is they basically interviewed each captain. So they start with Kirk, and then they start with William Shatner, then they went to Patrick Stewart, then they went to Avery Brooks, and then they went to Kate Mulgrew, and then they went to Scott Bakula. And they basically had them pick their best episode, and then the fans could pick a couple of episodes that would go right along with their episode. And so on disc 3, it's Far Beyond the Stars, which was Avery Brooks, the one that he actually directed, but he was also kind of the main star of it. And then it has What You Leave Behind, which was the series finale, and then it has In the Pale Moonlight, which is the one where Senator Vreenak, they're trying to get the Romulans into the war. Okay, And it's awesome. It's the best episode of Star Trek I've ever seen. I mean, honestly, that and The Visitor, I think, are probably my two favorite Deep Space Nine episodes, outside of maybe Way of the Warrior, where Worf is, comes to Deep Space Nine. Anyway, I'll get back to what I was saying. So, that's the point, okay? Then, like, he talks about this, uranium, lead, and all this kind of stuff. These methods have never actually been used to date the Earth. Okay? They might use it to try to date things, but what ends up happening is that they get wildly inaccurate numbers because they make total assumptions, and so they throw the whole thing out. It's a joke. Radiometric dating is an absolute joke, and even if carbon-14 does decay at 5,400 years, you're taking it in. If you were to take some skin of yours and you were to test it, okay, you would not get, because you're going to assume that, I've only been living this long, so I should get, I should have, the, 16 clicks on my Geiger counter to show that I'm, or I should have maybe 15 clicks on my Geiger counter to show that I'm, that I'm less than 5,800 years old, but you're going to get wildly inaccurate numbers. Because you have a lot of carbon-14 in your body. You also have a lot of nitrogen in your body. Because what's in the air around us? Nitrogen. And carbon-14 is still increasing in the atmosphere. Okay? The thing was, when they first created carbon dating, they said, oh, great, we've got this method. Radiocarbon dating. And then they said, well, we know the Earth is billions of years old. Mistake number one. So we can ignore the equilibrium problem. Mistake number two. Because it takes, if you took a brand new Earth, stuck it out in the, took a brand new Earth, you stuck it out in the cosmos, and started bombarding it with cosmic rays from the sun, okay, you would start forming C14. And in around about 30,000 years, that C14 would stabilize, according to their theory, okay? This is the theory, we haven't seen it yet. Because carbon-14 is actually increasing in our atmosphere. Okay? So, they make these assumptions. They really do.
I'm afraid.
You are extrapolating the data like way further than what is justified. To take 100 years of information and say that these principles have remained exactly constant for millions and billions of years is...
That is called... uniformitarianism, okay, in geology. It's the present is the key to the past. What we see now is the key to what happened then. And it's wrong. Because we know that rapid geology is a thing. Yes, the plates aren't moving as fast right now, but you couldn't get the Himalayas unless you actually were moving at a pretty good clip, okay? In fact, Here's a thing. I just want to pause it here just because I wanted to say this. Here's something that you should look at. Okay. Get Google Earth. Get Google Maps. Okay. Go to satellite view. Go down to California on the west coast of the United States. California, USA. Okay. Back it up. Search for Bishop, California. Okay. Then you're going to pinch and you're going to pull out on it. Okay. So you have a nice view of the Sierra Nevadas. You'll see the Owens Valley, which is where Bishop is, and then you'll see the Basin and Range. Okay? Now, when I was in my Geology 101 class, guess what the teacher told me? He goes, if you take a placemat, okay, you put your hand on the front of it, and you move it along, and you hit the other placemat, you have your hand on the back of it, and you hit it like this, okay? You will see that you get a big bulge in the front, you get a valley, and then you get a bunch of little ripples. But you have to hit it at a consistent rate. You have to hit it hard enough to make it to do that. Because if you just go slow and you hit it, what happens is it doesn't just bunch up like that. It actually bulges way up. Okay? And it won't look like it's supposed to. You have to hit it a certain way. Okay? And it's the same thing with the Himalayas. If you look at the Himalayas, okay, the Himalayas go up and down, and then there's this big thing, and then there's Mongolia, which is where the steppes are, the Basin and Range. Okay? That had to be moving pretty fast to be able to create those mountains that high. And we know that it didn't happen over millions of years, because if it had, the rock layers would have broken. We would have seen a lot of shattering along fault lines. We would have seen a lot of rocks being broken, but we don't see that in the Himalayas. What we see is, we see layers doing this. You can't get that out of rock. You get that out of mud, but you can't get that out of rock. So no, uniformitarianism doesn't work.
Completely crazy. It is not scientific, and no one should believe in ancient Earth or that we evolved from monkeys. It's completely crazy.
The longer this video has gone on, the more fantastical your reasoning has become. And you appear to be getting more triggered as well. I put it to you that you get angry with people for accepting that evolution is a thing and that the Earth is over 4 billion years old. And actually, you debunk yourself in your own video. That lovely little bonsai tree there, just over your right shoulder, for example, no doubt a Chinese elm. Now, the elm tree is part of a family of trees that evolved around 110 million years ago, proven by molecular dating and diversification analysis. You really don't have a leg to stand on.
Sorry, Dan, you don't have a leg to stand on, because how did that bonsai tree get that way? So this bonsai tree right here is what he's talking about, okay? Just over his left shoulder, okay? That's what he's talking about. It's just over his right shoulder, but to Dan it's his left because he's looking straight on. But it's over his right shoulder, it's not his left shoulder. I'm on his left shoulder, because I'm down here in the corner. How did that bonsai tree get that way? I mean, yes, it's related to a Chinese elm, but how did it get like that? That wasn't evolution that did that. That was man. Okay? A person actually shapes the tree to make it look like that. Okay? They actually like put wires around it, and they prune certain things certain ways, and they prune branches certain ways, and they make it so that it grows in certain ways. Man did that. And no, Dan, you don't have any proof that the Chinese elm tree is 135 million years old. Okay? Now, before this video, I had never heard of molecular dating. I still have never heard of molecular dating. I actually did a quick Google search to try to find molecular dating. I can't find anything on molecular dating. There's no such thing as molecular dating. I think he meant to say that they did some carbon dating and they found some molecules that were similar in trees that are in a rock layer that are 135 million years old. That they claim is 135 million years old. But they don't have any proof. Because that rock layer at 135 million years, unless the tree was petrified, there's no way that tree would be a coal deposit or an oil deposit, because that's what they become under heat and pressure. So no, it's not 135 million years old. They have no idea what they're talking about when they say that.
Please share this video with anyone who's still stuck in that Darwinist scientism cult, and they're giving into these superstitious belief. You know, they're a Darwinist believers. They have their Darwinist faith. We have our Christian science. We use reason and logic. They are completely operating on just crazy made-up fairy tales.
Reason and logic. I can give you a list of things as long as my arm that are not logical in the Bible.
Oh, and yet he doesn't. Because they've been debunked. Every single time. So come on, Dan. Give me that list. Come on over here. Give me that list. I'll take it on. And I'll show you that it's not contradictory. It doesn't defy reason and logic. Because, here's the thing. Professor Dave did that. One of my first videos on Professor Dave was a debunk of him challenging Kent Hovind with some biblical verses. Oh, look at this thing. It says it's a molten sea. Ha ha ha. It's a pool. A gigantic pool. And if all you've ever seen is say the Dead Sea or the Sea of Galilee, and you went to somebody's house that they were building, and they had a pool that was 30 cubits long, which a cubit, by the way, is from the tip of your elbow to the tip of your finger, and then if you add those 4 fingers to it, that's about what a cubit is, okay? That's actually, I think it's an Egyptian long cubit. The Hebrew cubit is from here to here. But either way, it doesn't matter. It's a big freaking pool. And you would look at that, and it's made of bronze. And when you fill it full of water, it would shimmer in the sun. And it would look like molten bronze. And that's what the guy's describing. There are no illogical inconsistencies in the Bible. It is made up in their head because they want to say that this is a work of fiction, okay? And that Darwin's book is scientific gospel. You cannot argue with it, even though it was written by men, just like the Bible. Dude, I'm going to tell you this once. You believe that this Bible was written by men, which it was. The actual people writing it were men, okay? But I have passages in here that tell me that all Scripture is God-breathed, okay? That God is the one revealing Himself through the Scriptures. You don't have that in your gospel. What you have in your gospel, in your book on the origin of species, what you have is one man's interpretation of finches, birds on an island. That's what you have. And yeah, I'm a little triggered by it because you sit there with your smug ass and ignore all the mountains of evidence that back this book up. You guys sit there and go, oh, nobody uses the Bible as history. Yes, they do! The Israelites use the Bible as their history book in school. That is literally what they use to teach people history. Is the Old Testament. That's the Jewish Bible, you absolute freaking moron. You'd have to be stupid not to think that the Bible isn't used for that. Hell, even the Muslims use parts of the Bible, okay, parts of the Torah as theirs because they believe that Ishmael was the firstborn son, true son of Abraham and not Isaac. Okay? And so, yeah, they will use parts of that as their history, okay? They will use parts of the Bible as history, parts of the Old Testament as history, okay? Because their histories cross with the Jewish histories. We have records, secular records from Babylon, from Persia, from various places that prove that things that happened in the Bible, in books like Daniel and in Chronicles and in various other parts of the Bible, they have these proofs that events that happened there happen here. Okay? We know this stuff happened. We know it's real. It's your willing ignorance.
An evangelist for young Earth creationism. This ancient Earth evolutionary fairy tale needs to be debunked. And people wake up to this. If the government and all this, the big powerful people in the world can lie about this, then what else are they lying about?
Well, yes, that's a topic for another video, but I don't seem to recall the governments of the world being too bothered about evolution.
Well, actually, you're right, Dan. The governments don't seem too bothered by evolution. That's pathetic. They should be. Because there's no evidence for it. Okay? Yet it is taught as scientific gospel in schools. Everything that I mentioned in this is being taught right now to your children, either in elementary school, in middle school, in high school, or in college. So yes, we do need to go wake someone up. Sorry, I stopped on his O-face here. I was trying to stop it, and for some odd reason, it didn't stop right exactly when I stopped it. It jumped a second. So, folks, this has to end. It really does. Okay? Evolution? Stupid. Absolutely idiotic. Okay? It does need to end. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment below, let me know what you think of this. I know this video went a little long, So, I hope you stuck around to the end, because I kind of needed to debunk a few things that were in this video. Not just from Dan, but from this other guy when he posted that one picture. I needed to be able to talk about that. Okay? So, I still need to get to my Spider-Man retrospective. I still need to finish that. And then I'm also going to be looking at some other movies here. I've been kind of looking through, and I've been kind of seeing what I want to talk about in terms of movies and stuff. I actually just picked up the. I'll show you here. I actually just picked up the Batman, and I just picked up the newer Mortal Kombat. So I'll watch those, and I might do a review on those as well. Just because it's like, I haven't been able to see them. I know people were talking about how great of a movie the Batman was, so I need to sit down. I need to watch it and see what they're doing with it and all that kind of stuff. So there's that. And then as for Russ Plays Games, I'm looking at doing a couple more paint tutorials, and then I'm gonna kind of move some of my stuff off the table. I'm going to reopen the table up, and I'm going to pull out my Sword and Sorcery, and I'll do a few Let's Plays of that to try to get that back going again. So, as we say, we will see you. So stay tuned. Keep it locked here at Russ's Movie Corner and Russ Plays Games, and we will see you on the next one.